Good evening to everyone present here tonight in Malaysia. My name is Yuyu and I will be your host for tonight. On behalf of the JPO family, we'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone tuning in tonight's broadcast. We hope that everyone is doing well and staying safe indoors. A friendly reminder to maintain good hygiene at all times and maintain social distancing when heading out. To anyone who is interested in sharing tonight's broadcast, a live feed is being shared on the JPO YouTube channel. Do like and subscribe to channel so you can receive live notifications. If you have any questions you like to ask, please feel free to type them out in the Q&A section down below in Zoom and the chat box in YouTube. A recording of the webinar will also be uploaded onto the channel later on. Ryan Lewis is a pianist and music educator from the UK, currently based in Malaysia. He works with ABRSM as the Southeast Asia regional consultant with a role to help develop their work and support teachers across the region, as well as being a graded music examiner and workshop presenter. Ryan graduated from King's College London and studied piano at the Royal Academy of Music. He also studied composition and piano at the University of Toronto, Canada. More recently, Rand completed a master's degree in educational leadership awarded through the Institute of Education, University College London. His research interests include developing professional identities among music teachers, building capacity for leadership, facilitating learning communities, and fostering reflective and dialogic practice. Rand has given many talks, led focus groups, and presented conference papers on these topics across Southeast Asia. Prior to his role with ABRSM, he spent 3 years leading various music education projects in India, including curriculum development, teacher training, and community outreach programs. Tonight's interview features Ryan Lewis with his topic about understanding music exams in context, a holistic approach. As our JPO family attendees are mostly students ranging from primary school to college, their parents and their teachers, the sharing of knowledge and advice you have for all of us is invaluable and greatly appreciated. The JPO is very honored to have Ryan joining in as our guest tonight. I hope that you will all join me in giving him a warm welcome. Welcome, Ryan.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you very much for the invitation.
No problem. We are very happy to have you here. And without further ado, thank you so much for joining in with us today. And to start off today's interview, as you are from the UK and lived in Malaysia for so long, please, can you tell us about your observation of music education in Southeast Asia?
Thank you. Yes, I've lived in the region for over 10 years, and during this time across India, Malaysia, and many other Southeast Asian countries, I've been able to work with hundreds and thousands of teachers through all the workshops I've led and the events that I've organized. So it's given me a fascinating insight into music education across many different contexts here. So I'm very pleased to be able to talk to you about some of that. I mean, as I mentioned, the music education plays out in many different ways, whether it's in schools, but often actually in a private setting. And this isn't just here, but also even in the UK and in Europe, where, you know, we have a mixture of classroom music teaching, but also people learning their instrumental studies outside. I do find, however, in my time in Malaysia particularly and across Southeast Asia, the provision for music education in schools is more limited, perhaps kind of less expertise or less funding, unless it's maybe private schools. And so therefore, a lot of children access their music studies through tuitions outside of school, in their evenings or at the weekends. which again, there are similarities as well, let's say in the UK. But one of the challenges with that is then around kind of access. Not everyone might be able to access a teacher, and also not everyone might be able to afford a teacher. So there are also kind of equity issues with sort of access to music education. We're often championing about music education for all, but of course it does come down to access and whether people can afford it. And, that's why projects like what the Jesselton Philharmonic are doing are fantastic. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. But because it plays out in a more of a private setting, there are kind of other sort of aspects to that which become benefits and challenges, I think. A big part of my work is working with teachers, and actually, if you think, a lot of these teachers are all working privately. They're often very disconnected, working in all parts of the country and around the region, but often don't have a community setting or a core support group. So a lot of teachers sometimes work in isolation, but don't have support from an organization like you would if you're working in a school, or if you're so these teachers themselves may not be able to access professional support and professional learning, which then has an impact on the music education experiences of the children they teach. So I think one of the challenges with the fact that a lot of music education plays out in a private sphere is that we do have this kind of disconnection. And as a result, what I'm quite interested in is how we as a music industry and a music education profession really try and articulate a shared vision for music education. And so we all share the same beliefs and vision for what music can achieve. And I believe with sort of building stronger kind of communities around the region, we can achieve that. But as I said, there are challenges where music education is either sort of disconnected in the way it's taught, and also lack of funding in terms of really getting that kind of professional support for teachers, to impact the communities that they're teaching. And it kind of leads me on a bit as well to what I really want to get to in the talk this evening, which is actually talking about the role that music exams play, because in more classroom traditional settings in schools, these kind of instrumental music exams are not so common. People follow a normal curriculum, and they may choose music as a specialism when they're a lot older. But the music exams that people are very familiar with tend to be linked to the kind of private tuition that children take outside of schools. And I notice in particular in this part of the world, there is quite a big emphasis on those exams. So, what I'd like to perhaps talk about is perhaps why there's such an emphasis, and why there might be, challenges with that. One of the things is that because, as I said, in some settings where there's maybe not so much support for music education in schools, the framework for music learning is provided by exams. So people do look towards them because they do give kids a structure to work towards. There are levels and benchmarks of achievement for them to aim towards. And so that's obviously the really useful goal of exams. It motivates them, shows the parents that they're learning and progressing, so they have lots of benefits. But what I've found is that often the sole kind of approach of the teaching is all centered around the music exam and the requirements of the exam. And as someone who does a lot of work with teachers, I am very often asked the question, how do I get more marks in the exam? How does my student get more marks in the exam? And when those questions are being asked of me, I sometimes think the focus and emphasis is not in the right place, because it's learning music is not all about marks on a piece of paper. It goes a lot deeper and broader than that. So I think one of the challenges is that if music exams are the sole focus of a child's music learning experience, they always then associate music with being tested, whereas I think what we want is to associate music with something we love and enjoy and throw ourselves into the activity and have a passion for, not something we're always kind of either feeling that we're being assessed on, or competing against one another, or therefore kind of fearing the experience. So again, this is what I'll get to in a while, talking about the importance of a holistic approach. It's kind of important that music exams are understood, in their context, really. And yeah.
Right. And I was thinking of, when you're talking about emphasizing everything, like especially marks, is there like because you've been in Malaysia for so long, and have you like visited, like going back home, and have you been traveling back home, except for the COVID pandemic, like maybe before? And I was just thinking, is there any difference, like, because I think we Asians, I think we want to get like good marks and like perfect things. We want to get things perfect. But
Mm.
I'm curious about in the UK, what is the difference between the education of music in UK and in Southeast Asia? Is there like, are parents and teachers more focused on the marks and everything, or are they more focused on the soul and how the students enjoy music?
That's a really interesting question, because actually I would say in the UK, in mainstream education, testing is quite prolific. Kids are being tested very often, and some people would see that as being a problem. They're being tested too much in their main classroom settings. But actually in the kind of private music education sphere, although music exams are very common and very popular, they're only a small part of what someone experiences usually. And so there's sort of 2 points here. One is that, if I reflect on my own experience growing up, yes, I did a music exam every year, but that was only a small part of what I did. And I just learnt those 3 pieces when I needed to, and did it. But then I was always learning lots of other repertoire and doing other musical activities. So my music experience didn't center around that. It was just something that was part of a bigger picture. But secondly, I learnt music because I really loved the piano and wanted to explore it and get to know it. And the support was there from sort of parents, and there was a general encouragement for people to, explore music if you really, have a love and desire and interest for it. Whereas what I do find here a lot of the times is that children are often forced into music classes, which you might think, oh, that's a good thing, but often it's with the idea of getting a certificate as the outcome. And so the focus is quite different. The initial focus isn't always around, allowing my child to explore and develop a love of music. It's, no, do this because then you'll get certificates afterwards. So that kind of approach changes the whole way, the child might experience their music education, which I think has its limitations.
Yes, thank you, thank you. So, what does a holistic approach to music education look like? Can you tell us about this one?
Right. So, I think first and foremost, as teachers, when we're working with our students, what we want to instill in them is a lifelong love of music. And in order to do that, I think we have to go beyond just the scope of a music exam syllabus. And so, when we just talk about music exams, the syllabus itself is not a curriculum. It's not a series of lesson plans and what have you. And the syllabus is only really designed to test a snapshot of your broader musical abilities. So yes, in the exam, we only itemize certain things we want to test, but that's representative of something broader. So obviously, if that's the focus, that's quite narrow. But then thinking about how we turn that into a holistic approach that encapsulates those syllabus requirements. Well, firstly, music exams need to be just part of what a child does. So, for example, you would hope that in learning music, the child would be exposed to going to concerts and enjoying listening to a range of different musical styles. You would also hope that they would have the opportunity to perform in public as well. So again, we don't want their only performance to be once a year in an exam room where they play 3 pieces. But we would hope that they are sharing those 3 pieces and many more pieces in other contexts. And even more importantly, there are so many benefits to music education, and one of the key benefits are the social aspect of it. Being able to perform with others, learn alongside your peers and other children, and learn together in orchestra and ensemble and choir settings. And so this is all part of what makes a more rounded music experience. And certainly as a piano player myself, I found sometimes it could be quite a lonely experience. But, actually, once you start to then accompany other people, and perhaps if you sing as well, joining choirs, you then get to really benefit from the social aspect of making music with others, which is a really beautiful thing. And again, if we incorporate that, it will help to develop a lifelong love of music for our students. So their musical experience is not just a 45-minute lesson once a week, but rather music plays an active part in their life in an ongoing way. And that can look differently depending where you live, because in Malaysia, if you're here in Kuala Lumpur, there's a lot of musical activity in the Klang Valley. But if you live in a small town or village further away, you might have less access. Fortunately, we have the internet, and especially over the last year, we've learned to do a lot online and perform online and teach online. So you can access a lot. But of course, there's nothing quite like the face-to-face experience as well. So I think that that's a really important thing that has to be part of a holistic offer. And I think sometimes maybe when parents sign up kids for a music class, I think, oh, it's just a 45-minute lesson once a week. But actually, of course, we know as music lovers, it's something much more all-encompassing than that, and requires, a lot more exposure and access to other opportunities.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, talking about holistic approach and the teachers, because you work more and most with them. So how do we get more teachers to adopt to a holistic approach in music? Yeah.
Sure. Well, one of the things as music teachers is we often end up teaching the way we taught. And that really depends on your experience as a teacher. Not every music teacher will have gone and done a music degree. And even if they have, they might not have done pedagogy units as part of that, And so often what happens in our kind of culture of music teaching is we just teach the way we're taught. And what I find a lot of as well is, people often see themselves, let's say a piano teacher, they see themselves as, I teach the piano. And I always challenge them and say, actually, you teach music on the piano. And there's a subtle difference, because music is the art, the piano is the craft, that's the technical bit, but you are making music on an instrument. And I know that might sound like a really obvious thing to point out, but it really changes the way I think people frame their teaching and approach, because sometimes the teaching approach can be very technical and scientific. I'm teaching an instrument, I'm mastering an instrument, but actually what you're mastering is music on an instrument, that you communicate and use the instrument. We often talk about the instrument being an extension of our body, and it's something that we communicate through and express through. And so that's let's say a starting point for thinking about a holistic approach, because a holistic approach requires you to think about musicianship skills more broadly, not just technique on your instrument, but really understanding, the background of the music, being able to develop, all your kind of oral skills so that you can play with more sensitivity and shape. And it's really through all those listening activities and musicianship skills that you develop, more personality in your playing, more expression and sensitivity. And it's through those kind of activities as well that even, children start to develop their own identities and interests, when they're engaging with their imagination and thinking in sound and being more kind of artistic and creative with the way that they think about music, rather than it always being a technical activity. I'm just reproducing a piece of music, rather than I'm creating something and producing something myself. And so I think this maybe sometimes scares teachers because maybe they themselves have not been taught in a way that encourages creativity and improvising and singing in music lessons. Sometimes people say this is a piano lesson, not a singing lesson. But I say, yes, but this is all about developing your musicianship skills and developing your ear. I mean, this is our most important faculty as a musician, not just what we can do with our hands, or if we're, our embouchure, if we're playing or whatever. So, and again, I think this links back to an issue that we have with maybe the professional learning of teachers and it being a bit disconnected, and is that, if we have greater sense of community and a shared vision for music education, conversations around these approaches can be more common and teachers can learn from one another and feel more confident about trying these kinds of approaches, which, is something which has been a big part of all the events that I've organized, the teacher conferences where we have Dalcroze and Kodai pedagogy and lots of other interactive fun classes which kind of help teachers to think about more fun and interactive ways to teach. And one last example I will give is I talked earlier about the sort of technical approach to teaching piano or an instrument. Another way is the way theory is often taught. Theory is often taught in a very dry way, it's literally pen and paper and that's it, whereas actually, we want this to come to life, and when you're teaching theory, you would hope that the kids are clapping the rhythms or listening to the instrument or, you're bringing it to life in a practical way so it has more relevance and it's more engaging. Because there's a lot to be learned from music theory, but if it's taught in a really detached way, people don't make the connections with the practical and don't necessarily appreciate the kind of benefits of it. So a holistic approach really is all about, passion, creativity, and a more rounded approach to bringing theory and practical and, creativity and other aspects of music making all together as an experience.
Yes, like in other words, it's like sometimes we are more like the operator than a musician, like operating the instruments rather than making music. And I've when you're sharing, it relates, like it makes me relate back to when I have when I joined and when I participate in the piano examination. Like if it's just following like the program, like just like when I join, sorry, when I go to my lessons, my piano lessons, the teacher is just like, oh, we're just gonna, okay, practice this one, okay, play this and that, and then let's do a practice of the oral and everything. Like it's just so dry. And if all the teachers are like, if they make it more interesting, just like teaching music, not just teaching piano. Yeah, so I think it would be better, and I think it would be more interesting, and the kids, the students will like remember things more, because from experience I think we learn, especially because we have lots of very young children starting to learn piano when like they're very small. So I think the good experience will help them remember everything easily rather than just going through just memorizing everything.
Sure, and they'll enjoy it more, so they'll be more motivated to want to do it more often and practice more. I mean, one of the challenges with learning an instrument is you've got to practice, you've got to put in the hard work, and sometimes it's a struggle, and if you don't actually enjoy the music you're producing at the same time, well, that's sort of a double problem there. Whereas actually, at least if you just love it, you don't mind keep practicing and doing it over and over again, because you fundamentally just really enjoy doing it. So when I'm asked that question, how do we get more marks? My default answer is always make it fun.
Yes.
Because if you make it fun, your kid's gonna put more energy and interest into it, and of course it will come through in the sound they produce. you know, when I sit in an exam room, you can hear the difference between a kid who's forced to be there and, you know, and who doesn't really enjoy playing versus a kid who just lives and breathes music. It literally comes through in the tone they produce in their instrument. So, and that there is already extra marks because, you know, they're already using more sensitive tonal qualities, and the passion just flows out of them. And, you know, so that's a really important thing to nurture from the teacher's perspective.
Yes, yes, because I think our like Asian culture is quite um how can I say, it's not that fun, to be honest. We just follow rules and everything, but
Mm.
I can see teachers improving, and like how my friends as teachers, or my teacher, my piano teacher, like they joined all the programs that I think maybe you or previous consultants they've arranged, they've taken up, and I can really see my teachers and my friends improving, and how it helps in a holistic approach or in other approaches to the
Yeah.
students.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. So just a reminder for the audience who are in Zoom or watching live in YouTube now, please feel free to start typing any questions or to ask anything which is related to today's topic, and we will go into the Q&A section later on. And yeah, next, can you tell us, how do we convince parents, how do teachers convince parents that this approach is better, and rather than like only focused on exams? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. One of the things I just thought about when you were talking is also the fact that approaches to teaching here, maybe it's more kind of rote learning, you know. And one of the things that's maybe a kind of feared is the fact that when you're teaching an arts subject, actually, it's all about being creative and exploring and problem solving. And there isn't always a right answer. You know, there are sometimes many ways to play something and what have you. And so it really challenges people to break that mold of kind of rote learning and always wanting to know the right way to do something and what is the correct answer, versus being exploratory and creative, which is fundamentally what we try to do in an arts subject. So what teachers, you know, kind of have to understand, or what we have to understand in general when we're talking to parents, is what are all these benefits of music we're trying to achieve, you know. And actually when we look at some of the core competencies that we want children to develop, creativity is one of them. You know, we want them to be able to, you know, be innovative, you know, and to apply information in creative ways, you know, especially if they want to succeed as engineers and in technology and in innovation, right? And those are skills that you can develop, you know, through arts education, which really foster all that kind of creativity. And, you know, so what I would sort of argue when we talk about this holistic approach is you can learn music in a broader way and still get your exam results, you know. In fact, you'll even get better results along the way. So why not benefit from both? Because if you only take an exam-centered approach, I think you're limiting what you can experience and maybe limiting those benefits. But, you know, if we take this broader approach, actually, you're going to tick both boxes. And then I'm sure parents will want their children to benefit from all the wonderful things that music education brings children, you know, the, you know, greater sort of confidence and self-esteem and being able to stand on stage and perform, and better motor skills and analytical skills and things like that. These are all soft skills and critical skills that they will benefit other subjects and other areas of their lives. So I think it's really important that, you know, parents sort of understand this, because then they might be more sympathetic to other ways of learning that isn't just about teaching the exam pieces and the exam requirements. And I think another thing that, again, this links back to, you know, the issue I was talking about at the beginning around the professional learning of teachers and the isolation they face and everything is, you know, if we have a stronger sense of professionalism and community among teachers, there will also become a greater kind of respect for the profession, and teachers will feel more confident in trying new ways of teaching and, you know, and learning new things to apply them, rather than always just defaulting to what they did before. So these are sort of important things that we need, so that the teachers can then communicate to parents about why they're teaching in the way they are. And I suppose just some of the other things to say to parents is, sorry, I mean, I mentioned about, wanting, but I think parents always want for their children an enriched education, right? So if they're going to enroll someone in a music class, I think the parents need to understand what the full benefits could be. And in order to unlock that, to really appreciate that it's more than just fulfilling a music exam, But I think the other thing that also just came to mind as well is that often children learn music and get really great results in exams, and then they say, actually, I want to go on and become a musician. And then the parent says, oh, no, you can't do that. You've got to do something else.
Yes.
Which is quite ironic, really, because they spend so much time and energy learning, to a very high standard. But and I think part of the issue there in that instance is breaking the myth that you can't pursue a career in music, and understanding, well, how does a musician make money, and what does a portfolio career look like, and how can they balance multiple careers, because, I think if the child has the passion and energy for it, it's great to encourage that if that's the career they want to pursue, rather than the default setting being, you've got your grade 8, you can stop learning piano now and focus on being an engineer or a doctor or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe you have experience with this, or
It's not like forcing, not, but I have a passion. I really love music and I really have the passion for it, but it's just that in a realistic way, yes, it's quite hard if you want to survive in Malaysia. Especially I'm from Sabah. I'm from the other side. So the music field and in Sabah is really, it's quite small, to be honest, comparing to in Kuala Lumpur and and the place there in the capital. So my parents would be like, they're also encouraging, but they used another way by saying maybe you can proceed in a further education in something else and work hard to pay for yourself to play music, to enjoy music as a hobby. So for me, it's okay because I know what I want, but I still love music. So I can balance it, like maybe in the future when I finish my higher education or my degree.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's something you'll have for life, and even if you don't go on and become a professional musician and dedicate 100% of your time to it, at least you have that lifelong love of music, because I think the other reason why we need teachers to adopt this approach and for children to all really enjoy and get a lot more out of their musical studies is because we need audiences in the future. We need people who love music and want to pay to go to a concert and want to take their children to concerts and get their children to learn. We don't want a generation of people who learned music but then stopped it and never touched it again because they always associated it with doing an exam, and I do meet people who tell me of those kind of experiences where they finish their exams and that's it. They don't want to do anything with music anymore because they're almost traumatized by it. So it's really important that again that we understand the relevance of exams and how they can help with progression, but it's not everything. It's not the whole context, being able to have that lifelong enjoyment and appreciation of music is something which will benefit people long term. And especially when we think now, after the pandemic, the importance of well-being and mental health, we want people to be able to really lose themselves in music and enjoy it, even if it's just as a listener. Or of course, if they can play and pick up an instrument and play for leisure, great, even better, So I think those are some important things to remember as well.
Yes. So, because you have a clear vision for what music education should look like, but how is the pandemic impacting on this now? Can you share some with us?
Sure. I mean, the main obvious thing is just the kind of, I don't want to say the social aspect, but the face-to-face aspect, certainly, because we can recreate experiences online where we still at least socialize. But it's that human connection is so important, and it's something that we really develop through the arts. And a lot of arts programs have been affected from funding, and then also, of course, as we know, live concerts often suspended because kind of have audiences and so forth. So actually, when we talk about a holistic approach, and encouraging children to go to concerts and all these things, well, at the moment, all of that is sort of on hold, but there are things you can access online. So it's just become very, very different. But in a way, it's become slightly liberating, because actually more people can access stuff online, because it's available to everyone, no matter where you live. But then there's still an access issue there. If people, for example, actually don't have a device at home and don't have access to internet, then of course there's another equity issue there. But on the whole, like, for example, for us, we organize a lot of teacher events, which is a huge effort to organize events. And it's often difficult for teachers to travel far and wide to come to them. But then when we do it online, everyone can access it. And we can also make it available on demand. And so actually we can reach more people, and it's more convenient for them and things like that. So in the same way, teaching has its kind of benefits and limitations online. From an access point of view, a lot of people can be flexible and find more things online. But I think it's that social element that we miss and we crave as human beings. Being around one another and enjoying that social element. But as I just mentioned just a moment ago, I think music as a way of helping people cope is really, really important, and has been, I think, highlighted by the pandemic. And it's something which we certainly need to nurture the enthusiasm for music in all of our students, so that they can really benefit from it, even in really challenging times. And I mean, the other aspect I talked earlier about, all the benefits of music education and creativity and things like this. And I think one of the reasons why we really want to sort of encourage ensemble playing, which we can still do online to some extent, but certainly in person when we can get back to it, is, children learn how to work together and how to respect one another and how to communicate and how to collaborate, and these are really important life skills that we want them to take forward, and so that they can live together harmoniously, not just in an orchestral context, but in society as well. So these are some of the things which the pandemic has currently either put on hold or limited. But I think it's important that we're aware of all the beautiful benefits of music and why it's important to get back to all these activities as soon as we can.
Yes, talking about like social events and everything, I was just something just popped out. How will, like, because now most of the higher grade students, like distinction students, they have like higher score performance, and how is it going now during the pandemic? Is it still going on, or has it like stopped, or
Yeah. Well, we have adapted our model, working with ABRSM, the work we've done, to adopt it as more of a festival, kind of a competition model where people can perform. And we did that as a way of actually including many more people. But the key thing is we had to bring it online last year. So people had to submit their videos and things. And then, we were able to, adjudicate them and give them prizes and send them out trophies in the post and things like that. So again, for this year, we have to adopt the same kind of online approach for now. With this festival, but again, because everyone can, because it offers greater access, more people can take part. But still, I think what people miss is the opportunity to actually be on stage in front of people. Because of course, actually, when you do a recording, it's a different type of pressure, yes, and that's a good learning experience as well. But actually, I think what people want is the opportunity to go on stage, and it's a good confidence building thing, and and there's a sense of occasion, and hearing all the applause and everything else, So, I mean, unfortunately, we can't replicate all of that, but we have to do what we can, because we still want people to have some opportunity in the meantime.
Yeah, talking about online and everything, exams. So what are the benefits and challenges for online exams now?
Well, I think again, the benefit is the fact that, I mean, at the moment you can actually do your exam any time of the year, which before was a real challenge. You know, you could only do it like twice a year, and you had to register months and months in advance and what have you. So it just offers a lot more kind of flexibility. But I think some of the challenges are, you know, getting the recording and doing a good recording. People think it's easier because you can do it 100 times if you want to, but actually, after you've recorded something 100 times, it definitely won't sound the same. And I don't think it'll sound better necessarily, you know, so there's that real pressure of having the confidence to just be happy with the performance, even if there were a few mistakes and things like that. Whereas in a live setting, you just get on with it and you don't worry about it too much. So I think that's part of the challenge. But I think another challenge, and again, this links back to the holistic thing I was talking about earlier, is, you know, a lot of the online exam models are focused mostly around performing pieces. And of course, normally as part of our face-to-face exams, we also assess oral and scales and sight reading and these other essential skills. And, you know, I think there's an assumption that just because they're not specifically assessed online, we don't need to do them anymore, which I'm sure a lot of people might be pleased about, but that's really not the intention. And these are core and important skills that you need to develop. And what I always say is, you know, just because we're not going to assess your oral skills doesn't mean we can't hear your oral skills in your playing. You know, we can hear in your playing whether you have a sense of rhythm and a sense of shape and play with sensitivity and musical understanding, you know. So we can hear all those applied skills. We can hear in your playing whether you've, you know, been practicing your scales and have developed a good technique and good intonation across the range and all those sorts of things. So although people think, oh, you know, this is easier or whatever, or I don't have to do that anymore, actually, those are still really important skills and should be part of a broader, you know, music curriculum anyway. So that's just something I like to emphasize because I believe very strongly, especially in oral training.
Yeah, like I know that I feel that myself when I was back home, still playing, still taking exams, like oral scales, it's the worst thing ever. But improvisation and all music comes out, and the pieces just comes out like, well, if you have good practice in scales and everything. So I was like, yeah, no, I understand now. I feel it now.
Yeah, and sight reading is another really important skill that people are really worried about. But I think, but it's so empowering to teach sight reading. And I think if you don't do it, you're doing a disservice to your students because it just means that they can learn quicker and faster. And it's like, you know, once you learn to read, you can pick up any book and read it for yourself. I mean, I remember when I developed my sight reading skills and I could go into a music shop and pick up a pop song book and I could just play anything I wanted. It was so liberating, you know. And these are the kind of things that the skills that we can give to these students, and they can, you know, enjoy and benefit from them in so many other ways other than just, oh, there's 21 marks in an exam to be achieved from doing this. Well, no, actually, there's a lifelong skill to be achieved from it, which, you know, would be really, really empowering. So, yeah, I think these things are really still important to be developed, you know.
Yes, yes. So now we're going to go into our last question.
Mm.
And so, as you may have heard, the Jesselton Philharmonic Orchestra has involved itself in a variety of activities. On behalf of the JPO, we would like to ask your views on the JPO and its activities. Additionally, how would you suggest the JPO and its members further improve itself?
Mm. Well, firstly, it's been wonderful to see and follow over the years all the activities of the Jesselton Philharmonic Orchestra. And I think the outreach programs are wonderful because, you know, I mentioned earlier that phrase, you know, music education for all. And we know how enriching this can be for children's lives. And so I think the initiatives that have been led to give children greater access, either those who, you know, can't access it because of distance or because of financial situation, I think is wonderful because, you know, it'll give them so many benefits in their life, you know, not to mention all the social benefits and the other skills that we develop through learning music. So I think that's really, really important because, yeah, it's very empowering for them. It helps them to develop a sense of community and identity through music learning. And so it doesn't just have to be the preserve of, you know, the wealthy and the privileged, you know, everyone can access it. So I think it's a truly, truly remarkable initiative, you know, all the different concerts and workshops that are provided for the children, and even the new music exams I know that are being offered as well, you know, so that they also have a structured approach to learning and can get recognition for their success, you know. So I really applaud all these efforts, and may long they continue. So congratulations to all of you involved in all of this. I mean, you asked me about things for improvement. I mean, it already sounds like you're doing a lot of things to enrich people's lives and to do outreach programs. I mean, yeah, the only thing I would add is, I mean, I understand that a lot of the programs you do are more instrumental led, but of course, you know, I'm a big one for musicianship training and Kodai and Dalcroze, and actually, of course, everyone has a voice, you know, and that instrument is free. And so we all have that automatically. And so actually a lot of music can also be taught through singing and through choirs and that sort of thing, which even as instrumentalists, we can benefit from doing that as well. So there may be other ways to reach out to more people, or even enhance the current programs through even more kind of musicianship prep experiences and so forth. But, you know, I know that there is a massive choral scene evolving all throughout Malaysia and Southeast Asia, from all the festivals I've been adjudicating, what have you. So I just feel with singing as another medium for music making is well worth exploring the possibilities of it, and how it can connect to even more people. And another beautiful thing about the singing as well is, of course, you can, well, you do it through instrumental music, of course, anyway, but you can also incorporate so many of your local national songs and folk songs that really celebrate your culture and your heritage here. And that's a very beautiful thing that can be done through singing, but also can be done through arrangements, obviously, in instrumental music. So that's the only idea that really came to mind.
Yes, yes, it's a very good suggestion because we did. I remember a long time ago. I was quite young. We did something include like with choir, and it was so nice, so wonderful to like have small children or teenagers like singing a choir together. So yes, I think we should, yeah, continue with that. Yeah, because I think now we are more focused on like instrumental um yes, instrumental festivals and everything. Yeah. Yeah, now we're gonna move on into our Q&A section. So
Great.
here I have it's anonymous from anonymous. So
Yep, that's
someone said, "Hi, do you think music is crucial to be an integral part of a nation's education system?"
Absolutely. I think arts education are really important, and you know, there's so much emphasis been put on STEM education, but we often like to talk about STEAM education. Don't forget the A, which is our arts education. And I think it's just really important because you know, again, when we think of the core competencies we need children to develop for the future, especially creativity and being able to live and collaborate harmoniously together and all these sorts of things, a lot of these kind of soft skills that we refer to are not very easy to develop and teach in a maths class, maybe, or in a science class. But a lot of these kind of important skills are developed through music teaching. And so I think it's really important that it is featured as part of a national education system, because it's all about preparing not just a rounded learner, but a learner who's prepared for society and for the future, you know. And so through arts education and, you know, playing together and performing together and working together, you know, we learn a lot of skills that benefit us in our adult lives. And so I don't think those should be taken for granted. And those skills need to be nurtured right from a young age, of course. And so I think it's very important. And also I think the other important thing, and I just touched on it then when I was talking about, you know, local, you know, indigenous music and what have you, is it's a way of celebrating local culture and heritage and, you know, and pride in your local cultures. And that's something which, you know, that cultural education and aesthetic education should be really integrated in any national education framework.
Yes, thank you. And hopefully it answers the question for,
Oh, so.
yeah. And one more here. Someone said that I understand that you have done some outreach programs before. So would you mind sharing with us your experience on doing the outreach program?
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of these when I lived in India, actually, in particular, and they were sort of co-organized by the British Council and other entities. And it often involved me and some other musicians, like going into schools and sometimes going into schools in you know, more deprived areas where children don't have so many accesses to opportunities. And we would just do a lot of creative music making things with them. So we would teach them lots of little basics of kind of rhythm and harmony and getting them to explore different elements of music and music making. And it would always culminate in a performance that we would then showcase by the end. So if it's a 2-hour workshop, we would explore, we'd take a theme, like let's take rain, you know, and we would explore different sound effects, and we would create a composition with structure and different, you know, dynamics and different timbres and instruments and things. And the kids would all be part of, you know, creating this big composition that we would then just present at the end, you know. So yeah, it was really fun to do this, and it just gave them sort of a taste of, you know, how they can be exploratory and creative with sound, you know. And even at that level, I could go in and do workshops with people. They can't read a music clef, you know, they can't read the treble clef or play a flute or whatever, but with body percussion and singing and other effects and basic percussion instruments and things, we can create something really exciting and expressive. So, you know, it just gave them a flavor, I suppose, of being creative, you know, through the music medium, you know. So those were some of the programs we used to do to get people excited about music and wanting to pursue music and learn it.
Yes. So, okay, next. Okay, thank you for your sharing, Ryan. What would you say is the greatest challenge in terms of teaching and performing music as we transfer everything now to online?
Oh, goodness. I think as teachers, it's a lot harder to teach online. I think you have to do a lot more sort of preparation work, and you know, and with the student not there in the room, sometimes, you know, communicating everything is a bit more challenging, what you need them to do. And sometimes, you know, especially if they're young children, you actually need the parent to be sitting there with them, you know, which normally they wouldn't do if they were in your classroom. And so, you know, that dynamic of the parent becomes another challenge to manage, you know, and way to adapt. And so I think there are a lot of logistical things that, you know, make it challenge to teach online. In terms of performing music online, I think the biggest challenge is all to do with sound quality and latency and lag. You know, I actually adjudicated a music competition online, and we referred to Zoom rubato, where the music would slow down and then it would speed up and then it would slow down, you know, and or sometimes it was very choppy, you know, because sometimes Zoom, you know, cuts the end of it's designed for speech, obviously. And so, yeah, it's been quite interesting to adapt to online settings in terms of maximizing the quality of the music and the listening experience, you know, which I think we're all doing our best to constantly refine and buy new gadgets and try new apps and things. So I think that's a big challenge with performing online.
Yes, yes. So, would you like the next question? Would you like to share with us what is your opinion on music students joining choir, orchestra, playing chamber music, attending workshops and master classes and performing? Like, do you think that this is an important part of music education?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I feel that children should be able to take part in all these things and have all this kind of access, you know, and especially if they're learning an instrument that should be played as part of an ensemble, then they definitely should be experiencing both, you know, maybe their solo lessons if they have them, but definitely the opportunity to perform with others. And as pianists, for example, we were often encouraged to join choirs, where we could at least have the opportunity to sing with others and experience that. And I think this is all really enriching because it builds all your kind of musicianship skills and exposure to other repertoire and opportunities to perform live. If you join a choir, you might get many more opportunities to sing live than you would as a soloist, for example. And so it's about creating more opportunities. It's about building a stronger sense of support and community, because one of the big drivers to motivate children to learn music is how they are inspired by those around them, their teachers, their parents, and learning with others. So the more you can build a broader and richer context for their music learning, the more engaged and inspired they'll be to want to continue. So I think it's very important that we create these opportunities and encourage them to pursue them.
Yes. Like just now you've said building more and making it like bigger. Like from my experience, I would say it's so fun because when you just join an orchestra, or when you just learn that instrument, especially when you join an orchestra, you play together, so it's more like you have help with everyone. It's a
Yeah.
teamwork.
Yeah.
And then slowly you become like, you go into chamber music or like quintet, quartet,
Yeah.
or just duo. It's just like you're playing by yourself, and I think it's a level up. And
Yep.
it's like, and going into solo, it's just, the experience is so exciting, and it's a very different experience.
Yeah. And it definitely encourages kids to up their game as well, because children learn so well from each other, peer learning, and sort of like a healthy competition, if you like, and being surrounded by those who are more experienced and play better, it really encourages them and motivates them as well. So whereas if they just learn alone, they don't have that same motivation, maybe.
Yes, yes. And let's go into our last question. um Hi Ryan, do you think this pandemic affects the development of music in a good or a bad way in general?
Oh goodness. Well, development of music. I mean, I think as a music industry at large, it's had quite a bad impact, because of the limitations and cancelled concerts and things like that, and it's quite sort of heartbreaking to see, all the theatres closed in London and all over the world, all that sort of stuff, So from an industry point of view, it's definitely been really, it's had a huge impact and been very challenging. From a music education point of view, I think there's a lot of opportunity because, with so many people now learning online and being at home, there is, maybe more time to actually be at home and to practice. And it is an activity that a child can then do away from a screen as well, and so actually, I think there's an opportunity for more people to actually start learning music as a result of the pandemic. Because it's more accessible, but then they still need an instrument, unless of course they're singing. So it's a difficult question to answer, because there are definitely benefits and challenges from this pandemic for sure. So
Yes. Thank you very much for your responses. But I'm really sorry, everyone. We are coming to the end of tonight's broadcast. We would like to remind everyone that our JPO Family program will be broadcasted twice a week until further notice. Join us next time with our next guest, as will be posted near the time. More details can be found on our Facebook page. A video recording of tonight's broadcast will also be available on the YouTube channel, along with past webinars and the soon to be broadcasted interviews. So feel free to share the Zoom webinar registration link, JPO YouTube channel, and the JPO Facebook page with friends and family. For our YouTube audience, if you're enjoying our program, please show your support by pressing the like and subscribe button down below. You guys have been an amazing audience. Thank you very much. So we from the JPO family wish that everyone stays safe and healthy as facing this crisis together. So now I will lead the prayer to end tonight's program. Please pray in whatever faith you believe in regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the wonderful time we had tonight during this interview. I pray that you bless Ryan abundantly in all his career and future music, past, present, Thank you so much. We pray that everyone's to stay strong during this pandemic and giving us strength to overcome difficulties and giving us protection and healthy bodies when we go out or stay back home. Thank you, Lord, for everything you provide. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So thank you everyone for tuning in tonight, and thank you so much again for Ryan in sharing such a wonderful topic with us. So
Oh,
we'll
thank you.
see.
Thank you
Yep,
so much for
thank
having
you.
me. It's been a real pleasure.
Yes, happy to happy that you're with us tonight. But yes, we'll see everyone next time. So good night, everyone. Goodbye.